Hello, my friend, and welcome to Beyond, the personal growth podcast for the people who are healing beyond their conditioning and beyond the cycles that played out before them. My name is Katie Lynn, and with 20 years of experience in the field of psychology and human behavior, I am bringing my natural curiosity, expertise, and personal life experiences here for discussions that are guaranteed to be informative, inspiring, and entertaining. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Morgan, thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to know, where would you like to start?
Thank you, Katie. It's a pleasure to be here with you as always. I had my daughter January 2nd of last year, and I don't want to associate this with her birth because her birth was such a beautiful aspect. However, the hospital stay was extremely traumatic. We went in, my water broke at 40 weeks. Before that, I had fired my OB at 37 weeks because she did some unconsented cervical sweeps and also did a membrane check without telling me, which led into early bleeding without any education to me whatsoever. And I made, along with other decisions, to fire her because I didn't think we were on the same page. My daughter was healthy, beautiful pregnancy, everything you could dream of. And the minute I walked into that hospital, it's like everything turned on its head. The medical staff treated me like I was a village idiot. I had no right as a mother, especially being a first-time mom. Any birth plan that my husband and I came up with, they just poo-pooed. And I had put everything on the table saying, listen, I don't plan for a C-section, but if things go south with her and I in any regard, we'll go for it. Well, the inductions were pushed, the shaming started, and after 40 hours of labor, the anesthesiologist paralyzed me from the shoulders up, a spinal tear without telling me, which led into the C-section. And I know no matter what I did, there's nothing I could have changed from that because I was making the best decisions I could at the time. And I felt extremely vulnerable because it's such a beautiful space that you're supposed to be in giving birth. Then 10 days postpartum, I became septic without knowing it. Then back to the hospital, I was completely separated from my daughter and my husband for 5 days, where the OB that I originally fired was there, and they had to open me back up partially because I had a huge abscess tract. Well, she would go in and debride the wound without doing any local anesthetic or pain meds or anything, to where I was literally holding the sides of the bed and she was telling me not to scream because she didn't want the other moms in the hospital to be disturbed. And this went on 3 or 4 sessions. No matter who I told, nobody believed me. It's like, oh, no, she wouldn't do that. And I left there with the worst PTSD you could think of. And so here I'm supposed to be in this blissful time of the newborn phase, and everyone's telling me I have this beautiful, healthy baby and beautiful marriage. And I'm over here wanting to find a hole to literally die in. I felt shame and still do feel shame as a mom that it's like I failed, not just in the C-section part, but that she was exposed to things that I could have maybe made different decisions, but it's also made me very hyper vigilant in the world, or even against my amazing husband who wants nothing to love but to love us. I've just turned on him if I feel like there's any threat in any capacity, even if it's just simply I don't like the tone he used with her. I guess I would call it hypervigilance, and I can't seem to fully drop out of that. Things have gotten better since she's 15 months old now. I'm not who I ever used to be, which was super easygoing, mellow. Okay, I'll handle shit when needs to be done.
Yeah.
Then go back to being mellow. Now it's constantly like fight or flight, like let's go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for explaining all of this to me and sharing all of this with us. How does that feel in your body? When you say hypervigilance, what does your body feel like?
I feel really tense, especially like in my stomach, my womb area. My shoulders feel really broad. I always think of those Trojan movies with those big warriors just standing there like ready for battle. The minute I feel or perceive any type of threat, that's immediately where my body goes. Hypertension and just a really strong stature.
What would constitute a threat for you?
Anything that I feel is going to cause either bodily or emotional harm, mainly to my daughter, or anyone that questions my judgment as a mom. because I'm very proactive when she falls or something seems really big to her, like emotionally. I try to be very compassionate because for her, it's everything because she's 15 months old. And having anyone be like, oh, it wasn't that bad, or she's fine, she needs to get over it, and then start shaming me, saying, oh, you're going to make her spoiled, or you coddle her too much, it just, my hackles go up, and then it's just like game on at that point.
Yeah. And in your mind, is there an internal dialogue that you experience when this happens?
More so, I feel like I just really drop into my body, and it's almost like I have these blackout sessions. They're way better than they used to be. Right afterwards, I would be like a tiger ravaging the village because I have 2 older stepkids. And if anyone was too loud or disturbed her in any way, I would just go roaring through the house and just making utter silence. And then I would come out of it and looking at everybody like, what's wrong? And they're all like terrified. And I'd have no idea what happened. Where now I feel I've got the consciousness, but it's more in the body. But sometimes the dialogue is, am I doing it right? Or do they see something I don't see? Am I missing something? Am I doing too much? Am I going to make her spoiled by answering, every cry? And then I think it's more the doubting that comes with it.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the doubting?
I feel like I'm always questioning what I'm doing. Did I give her enough love today? Did I discipline her correctly? Am I doing it right? I'm living the outside in world. People that are experienced are telling me like, oh yeah, you're a great mom. Like you're so loving and nurturing to her. My biggest fear is my daughter going to therapy because of me or anything I've done.
Thank you for speaking this out. Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's the core wound for me, right? Because I had to do that with my parents. And so I'm like, I don't want to do that to my kids.
Is the fear I'm going to become my parents?
It's the fear because my mom is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And it was a horrific childhood that I had to grow up with. And my dad is very much the beta male, sweep it under the rug. It doesn't exist. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, am I going to be them? That deep subconscious. In the conscious part, I'm like, I know I'm not. I'm leagues and miles, not even close. However, that subconscious plays of like, oh, you reacted this way. Is that a reflection? Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for sharing all of this with me because it gives me a really great picture of what we're looking at. That question of, oh my gosh, am I repeating a cycle that I so desperately want to make sure I break? I hear the cycle breaker in you being like, this stops with me no matter what. And what you described to me is a situation that was not just traumatic because of one thing. It was traumatic because of a series of events that stacked on themselves. That creates a different kind of ripple effect when it comes to trauma and how we walk away from it. So I really want to put that into context because based on what you've explained to me, it's activated the animal body. And I actually love that you use animal references. Like I've heard mama bear, I've heard tiger, because there's the human spirit and there's the animal body. And all of us have both. I think every mother listening would attest to the experience of having the quote unquote mama bear take over. And that's the animal body. What you described when you shared, there are instances where I don't remember. What we call that from a psychology perspective is we call that flooding. Our nervous system actually gets flooded and your body is doing its job to protect you in a moment from the emotional or physical pain. And so it results in this like manifestation of disassociation through forgetfulness. I used to work with boys in the juvenile justice mental health programs, and they would come to me and after a fight, and I would say what happened, and they would say, I don't know, miss, I blacked out. What we know there is that your nervous system took over. For me, when I hear someone like you say that, it is because your nervous system was already heightened. Let's say if we are operating on a scale of 1 to 10 and 10 is the highest, right? Let's say you're consistently buzzing at an 8. Then it doesn't take much to go from 8 to 10. Other people watching might be like, oh my gosh, that's from the assessment of somebody who's not running at an 8 consistently. They're maybe at a 2. So I really want to put that into context for you and with you with so much compassion for self, because navigating hypervigilance can be very intense because the animal is operating based on perceived threat, not actual threat.
And that's such a beautiful reflection. And like I'm sitting here crying because you struck a chord. Because it was horrible, like, especially with my husband, who I know would lay his life for the both of us. Like, he lives for the two of us. And you'll see the pain on his face of kind of like, why did you come at me that way? And he's been the most compassionate person with me because for so long I was in denial of it. I was like, oh no, this is just normal. This is normal parenting. There was a part of me that knew my brain was trying to shove that away. And that makes complete sense because that's how it felt, like this sudden flood of emotion come over that I couldn't even begin to see the words flashing in my brain before it was just lights out.
Yes. And it's also a part of postpartum. As a mother, neurochemically, we're in a place where that's our role. Even if you go back to like caveman, cavewoman times, the infant, we wore them with us. We literally wore them everywhere. And so there was this co-regulation based on what you shared with me about what you experienced. There were these periods of time where that co-regulation wasn't really facilitated because of the circumstances that unfolded before the birth, during the birth, after the birth. There's definitely going to be some repair that gets to happen between you and your husband, especially as your nervous system starts to go down from like an 8 to a 6, and then a 6 to a 4, and then a 4 to a 2, especially as your little one develops language and ways of communicating and can tell you, this is what I need, this is what I'm feeling. There's a lot of ease that can come with that. The repair is a very important component to it too. And what I love hearing in your language is I love hearing the ownership and the responsibility and the accountability for it. I don't hear any denial of it. I don't hear any victim consciousness in there, even though there were moments where we might say you were victimized. There's a difference between being victimized and then carrying victim consciousness. Those are two different things. One is a violation of you, and one is a violation of your own consciousness by you. As we come forward into this present moment, how would you know you were being a truly effective mother and a truly effective wife in your situation, according to you?
God, you should keep pulling my heartstrings today, Katie. When Maddie is in any kind of distress, even if it's nap time, I'm the first person she looks to. In a room full of people that love her and have done nothing but devote to her, I'm her universe. And my husband, the way he looks at me, he has so much love in his eyes. Even if I'm talking about my day because I'm blessed and I get to be a homemaker with Maddie, he wants to hear everything about my day, even if it was just me making sourdough bread or playing puzzle pieces of her. He listens as if I was the CEO of a 500 company. Like, it's just the devotion that man has for me. And I get those statements every time we're out. People go, that man is devoted to you. Like, his love is palpable. The only way I can even begin to put it into words.
Do you love yourself in that way?
No, not in the slightest anymore. I used to. Where we live, the hospitals are only level 2 trauma centers. So if anything big were to happen, she and I would get air vac'd out of there, but separately. And I couldn't live with that. So my husband and I search for a good hospital. And this is supposed to be a number 2 in the state. So we made the, again, conscious choice of coming down before my due date. And from that point on, it was just horrendous because it started all this drama, especially with my dad, where he just decided, I have so much inner child wounding, I'm just going to put it on you and your husband. I just felt horrible because, again, it was my choice to come down here, try to be close to the hospital and try to pick the best hospital. And I just slowly started losing that love for myself of like, you're not doing this right. You're not keeping your family safe. Like, I really felt I brought the people I love the most in this world into the lion's den with my parents in the most vulnerable time. Because it's not like, hey, we're coming down for a family barbecue. Like, we'll chit chat for a few hours and then go home. Like, this is us bringing this sacred act of a soul coming from heaven to earth. And I bring you over here knowing there's dysfunction. I had no idea that's how it was going to unfold, but I carried tremendous guilt. And I think that's really when I started losing love for myself of like, if you love these people so much, why would you bring them into danger? And then taking her into danger within the hospital.
I heard something interesting. No, you said the word knowing.
Mhm.
Did you know?
I feel like I knew to an extent. There was a birth course I was in prepare, and she really harped on the fact of having a home birth, which again I really wanted. But knowing the hospitals that where we live, Michael was absolutely against it and was like, if something goes wrong, we're really screwed. And she really, in this birth course, really, really brought up about this hardship that's going on in the medical system right now, that there's more medical intervention going on than there is supporting mothers. And so that's where I feel like the knowing came from, that there was the potential of it going the way it did. From no,
Okay.
I didn't know the doctors were going to treat me the way they did, and the
Yeah.
medical staff, that I had
Mm-hmm.
no flipping clue.
Yeah. That's the distinction that I want you to see,
Mm,
is because there's a difference between intuitive knowing and fully knowing in
mm,
reality.
absolutely.
Because from where I sit, as I hear you share the way that these decisions were made, the way that your husband added his input, it all sounds like it was very much from the place of we want to have the safest experience for everyone as possible.
Most definitely.
And I'm not sure you get much better than that as a parent. And beyond that, everything, like you said, I think in the beginning, just got flipped on its head and went
Yeah.
haywire. This is where I really want to untie the powerlessness that you felt
Mm,
in this experience from self betrayal, because it sounds like what may have occurred is things started to go in a way that you feared, and then you contracted and felt powerless. That powerlessness got used against yourself,
yeah.
when really there were so many ways this could have unfolded. When we really zoom out, it could have gone beautiful, picture perfect, exactly the way that you wanted it to. And it could have been on a spectrum so much worse than it was. And these things that show up in our lives this way, they're so unfortunate and heartbreaking, and we wouldn't wish them on anybody. It's so important that we take a moment to step back and make sure that we don't leverage it against ourselves in that space. Based on the fact that you're here now with me and I can see you and I can hear you, there was nothing more that could have been done. Everything that could have been done has been done.
You play those mind games with yourself, right?
Yeah. One of the quotes that just has supported me so much is that just because it could have been different does not guarantee that it would have been better.
Not true.
Part of my intention today is to acknowledge what was.
Mhm.
Everything that you have shared with me, everything that you have expressed is valid. And I hear your mama heart, and I hear your wife heart, and I hear your heart as you evolve through this scenario. My intention is to turn you forward
Mm,
so that you can be present to it and not swallowed by it.
yeah.
Part of the healing process here is going to be definitely regulating your nervous system. The other part of it is going to be visioning forward
Mm,
so that everything that comes up as you heal your nervous system, you know how to leverage it for you and use it for you rather than against you. In what ways have you been working to regulate yourself?
right after everything happened, I knew I'd need a therapist. And that ended up being a whole journey in and of itself over a year. When I finally literally gave everything up to God and said, okay, you win. I'm done playing God, and I'm done doing your job.
Powerful move.
Yeah. I was blessed with a beautiful therapist about 6 weeks ago. So I go to therapy once a week. The biggest thing was our first meeting as her officially diagnosing me with PTSD, which is
Right.
something I knew I had. But
Mm-hmm.
having someone of her stature and yours look me dead in the eye and compassionately and go, yeah, it's true. I've returned to breath work. I see a chiropractor every 2 weeks, a masseuse every 2 weeks to help me
Great.
somatically, like reconnecting. Because I got to the point I couldn't even stand my husband hugging me or having my baby swaddled to me because I did not want to be touched by anybody. Those were practices I had before through pregnancy. and just really going back into my body state. I'm okay. And then I have the therapy for the cognitivity of working through that and getting EMDR for it, which has been helping as well.
Great. That's great. I would love to send you my power process workbook.
Yes.
That is a process that's for your thoughts as they relate to your feelings and as they relate to your outcomes and behaviors. And I use it every day, multiple times a day sometimes. But that's really so that you can ground into what is the situation? What are my feelings? Where does it show up in my body? What are the behaviors? What are the outcomes? So that you can really get back into your awareness of like, oh, I'm powerful. I mean, I met you as a powerful woman. You're still a powerful woman. And sometimes life throws curveballs that bring amnesia for us and we forget.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I would love for you to take some time and really connect to the woman you want to become from a qualities and characteristics perspective.
Okay.
What are the qualities?
I was going to say, could you give me an example of that?
Sure. So one of the qualities after I had our littlest one, and what it really brought me into was this awareness that I had tied my significance and my worthiness to external factors without realizing it. And I sort of heard this when you shared earlier about when people tell me I'm doing a good job, when people, right, this external validation, which is beautiful, right? It's so nice. And from where I sit now, it's like the cherry on top. It's like, I could live with it or without it. Either way, I'm good. For this particular process, one of the qualities that I landed on as I was like, who do I want to become? Who do I want to be as a woman? One of the things was graciousness.
Oh, I love that.
I want to be gracious in the face of anyone and anything that is not, or that doesn't feel gracious. And I want to be this woman who can be heartfelt and open and honest and well-boundaried with kindness and grace and compassion. And then as I sat with that, right, and I go, okay, I want to be this woman. And in prayer, I'm like, help me to become this woman. That's when the work really begins and life starts to bring you circumstances and situations that you go, okay, here's an opportunity where I can be the old me, or I can let my nervous system take over, or I can lean into my intention and my vision and slow down. Because when we're operating from hypervigilance, it's going fast. So step one is to slow down. And I set this rule for myself. You get 3 seconds before you respond to anything. Count to 3 in your head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Now I can respond. Being able to slow down for the sole purpose of keeping that intention front and center.
I love that. And I think that's the most beautiful reflection and example, because when I hear graciousness, what immediately comes to mind is like seeing you, I don't know why, the Santa Ana race park just seems to fit, and the beautiful flowy dress with a big hat. And then it's like you walk in front of people and time stops because you're so embodied.
Yeah.
And that's you, Katie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. When I hear that reflection, I really hear power.
Absolutely.
In my exploration of power as a woman, what I've learned up until this point, I'm sure there's more for me to learn, is that my power is in how I am able to regulate myself and how I can be in a moment when maybe my impulse, right? My impulse wants to go left, and I can pause and I can assess a situation and make a conscious choice about whether I go left or right. That's, to me, the journey that you're being invited on is like this next level of feminine power.
I love that because I embodied that to a certain level. And I can always think of that when I met Michael. And he immediately, he's such a bookworm. He handed me this book. It says The Power of the Pause. I was like, really, dude? Like, I know how to pause.
Right.
Yeah, on maybe half a second before this flood came out. But I do love that this is a calling forward. And And I think what an embodiment of motherhood as well, right?
Yes.
Because we can be reactive or we can
Yes.
be responsive. Which do
Absolutely.
you choose?
To me, that's what this life is about. This life
Mm,
is about you master one dynamic of power, and then life goes, yay, you mastered it. Let's blow it up and see how you can make it even better this time, right? And as women, we're like, wait, I thought I got the gold star. And the universe and God is like, you did get the gold star. Now you get to get another one, And we're like, damn, I thought, I'm tired. That's the beauty of this. My perspective, the journey of the feminine is just constant creation and iteration.
yes.
I tell people all the time, I wish somebody, when I was like 10, I wish somebody would have said, Katie, you're going to be so many different versions of yourself in this lifetime.
Mm,
Your lifetime is all about reinvention. So don't get too attached because you're going to live like 50 lifetimes
yeah.
in 80 years, 85 years, maybe 90. This is the iteration. There are lessons that came through what you walk through that fire, and we can go through and harvest them and go, this is what I want to take, and this is what I want to take. And everything else we can discard.
Mm.
Go, no, thank you. Not
I
bringing that
love
forward.
I love that. And I know there's this recent post I saw of yours that says you get to have it all.
Yes.
And I believe that's part of it because
Yeah,
it requires different versions of us.
absolutely. And when you look at all is all of it.
Yep.
All of it, highest of highs and maybe the lows, the lowest of lows. You hit
Yeah.
that bottom and you're like, wow, this is awful. And then you climb yourself out of it and you grow yourself out of it and you reinvent yourself in the ways that you need to be reinvented, and you reach this place. It's so beautiful here. And I love me again. I love me again. And I love my little family and I love my people. And
Oh, that's so true. And I love that quote you said that just because it would have been different doesn't mean it was better.
yeah.
That acceptance I have to come to is loving all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And also your beautiful reflection that I'm not being a victim in this.
Yes.
Because everyone's trying
Yes.
to like victimize me in it. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I wasn't beat over the head and like drugged and
For
like caveman. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I was making conscious decisions.
I'm glad you brought this up again because it is a very, very powerful distinction. There were things that happened that may have been classified as you being victimized. Were they morally and ethically right? We don't know. And there are things that happen to people in this world that are awful,
Mm-hmm.
terrible. People are absolutely victimized. And it's one thing to be victimized. It's another thing to live in that consciousness and continue to
Yeah.
regard ourselves as victims, because that is so disempowering for ourselves. For you, I see you really coming through this as like the most powerful emanation and version of yourself that has existed up until now. And just being so attuned to your needs as a result of all of this, to your husband, to your little one, and really being able to be an even more qualified mother because of that attunement and because of your ability to be discerning and gracious and compassionate with yourself and others. And what a beautiful gift that obliterates the fear that you mentioned earlier of I'm going to repeat this cycle. It's like, no, this is breaking the cycle. This is you actively breaking the cycle. And it doesn't look the way you thought it would.
I never even thought of it that way. Wow, what a difference. Thank
What a
you for that,
difference.
Katie. Like,
Absolutely. Well,
wow.
we can become sort of selectively blind to
Mm,
things. And fear can do that to us,
100%.
so ever so subtly, it sneaks in there.
Absolutely.
And what I like to do is I like to put the mirror up so that you can see, oh, wait, I've never been my mother. I may be of my mother. I have never been my mother in that way. Your healing work in this period of time is going to be such a gift to her. You will grow and evolve into such maturity that if she comes to you later in life and says, Mom, I think I need therapy, or Mom, this hurt my feelings, or Mom, how did this happen? You would be able to tell her with full transparency how it happened and with such love and confidence, validating her experience. You've matured so much in your own ways. She will probably be able to bring you anything and everything, and you would just see her and receive her in the same love and kindness that you give to yourself at that point.
That's what I've always wanted for my kids.
Yeah. Your embodiment will go further than anything. The work that you're doing now, being in therapy, us having this conversation, you doing your breath work and whatever journaling you need to do in the power process, and our healing work really facilitates our embodiment, which facilitates everything else. You're doing it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us and for being willing to step in this way with yourself and for your daughter and for your husband and for anyone who lives and operates in your universe. It's really a blessing.
Thank you, Katie. I really appreciate that reflection. And thank you for offering such a beautiful space to be held in, and also the transparency that you provide for other people to heal from that. I just think that's incredible.
Thank you. As we complete this episode, I would love to know your insights, takeaways, and feedback. You can message me on Instagram at Katie Lynn Rojano or send them via email to katie@katielynnrojano.com. Any products or digital downloads I mentioned can be found via the link in my Instagram bio. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to share it with at least one friend and leave a 5-star review so we can get these impactful dialogues into the lives of even more people. I would also like to thank my guest for their vulnerability and generosity in allowing us to learn from them and grow alongside them. Until next time, friends, let's go beyond.